Okay. I just want to check one more time this waiting room, make sure I don't have anybody trying to get in that is not. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. All right, great. Looks like we're all here. Or hopefully everybody that wants to be here is here. I'm just going to say real quickly, I do try and monitor the the waiting room and the chat. I'm sorry, the waiting room and the chat and everything else. But there's a lot going on I have two screens here. There's a lot going on. So if you have a question and I miss it, please do feel free to just go ahead and unmute yourself. I am going to try and use breakout rooms a couple times in the next 50 minutes that we have together. And I think at least one time I was presenting yesterday as well. And I think at least one time I forgot that once I come back from breakout rooms that you're no longer seeing my shared screen. So if that happens again, if somebody could please, again, unmute yourself and remind me so I don't waste anybody's time, I'd appreciate that. But again, I think we're all here. Last time, if you, I think everybody probably knows, but for sketches, make sure you get your name in the, oh, we got another person in the way, in the, oops, another participant, and I just closed it. So I need to make sure I can let everybody in. There, here we go. All right, so last time, just make sure you get your name in the chat there for sketches, right? Just as a backup. All right, thank you everybody so much for joining us on a Saturday morning. So again, this is I think my third or fourth time presenting to teachers with the Michigan Council for the Social Studies Conference. I was really looking forward to going to Traverse City last spring, and then in the fall, and I still haven't made it. So one of these days I hope to make it up there. But again, thank you so much for spending more time in front of your computer, which I know is what everybody wants to be doing on a Saturday morning. So again, I greatly appreciate you joining us, and I hope to make this time valuable for you. My name is Andrew Askovich. I'm a trainer educator for the Institute for Curriculum Services. We're a nonprofit based out of San Francisco, California. I'll tell you just a bit more about that in a moment. I was a high school history teacher in Chicago for 14 years at Hyde Park High School. Taught everything from freshman world studies to theory of knowledge in the International Baccalaureate program and world study in U.S. history and contemporary American history, consumer education, civics, everything in between. I had a great experience teaching, but for the last few years, again, I've been doing workshops and presenting to teachers with the Institute for Curriculum Service, and I've enjoyed doing that as well. I got to say, I enjoyed doing it more when I went to conferences and met people in person than sitting here in front of my computer. But again, I hope to make it back in person with everybody soon. On that note, we do provide professional development to teachers at conferences, but we also go out to school districts. So if you like what we have, either this session or any of the other sessions we offer, please let me know, and we can do something like this for teachers in your school. Again, small groups at this time. Again, if it's just over Zoom, I can definitely do that. But I'm happy to make sure that we continue to share our resources with teachers and hopefully continue to meet your needs. Okay, so the why and how to teach religion in the classroom. Briefly, the objectives in the session here, we're going to start with just a moment or two on who we are at ICS. We'll spend a little bit of time on why teach religion and talking a little bit about religious intolerance. From there, we're going to go to the how to teach religion and talk about religious literacy and what it means to explore that. We'll take a look at some primary sources. We are, Institute for Curriculum Services is proud to be part of the Library of Congress Teaching with Primary Sources program, a consortium member. So we really like to point out the resources that they offer and the strategies that they have, and we do sessions on that as well. So we are going to explore some primary sources in the session. Then we're going to analyze some case studies and talk a little bit about experiences that teachers have and some controversies that sometimes arise when teaching about religion. And then in the end, we have some ready-to-use resources that you can bring into your classroom and some suggestions of how to go about teaching religion in the classroom, including some digital tools and links that I will share with everybody. Okay, again, just real briefly on ICS. dedicated to improving the quality of K-12 education in Jews, Judaism, Jewish history in Israel and the United States, as well as working to expand the teachers' use of primary sources in the classroom and develop critical thinking skills. Again, we do this by developing standards-aligned curricula and training teachers around the country. And one thing that I know, again, when I was in the classroom, something that I felt strongly about, and ICS does as well, we believe an excellent education is essential to building a strong civil society where all people can flourish. And I think learning about religions and learning about people of different cultures and people that may be different from you, of course, is very much a part of all of that. Again, we have all kinds of professional development that we offer for teachers in a variety of ways, including online. So if any of this is of interest to you, please do check out our website. I'll go ahead and put it up in the chat here, but it's just icsresources.org. Again, all kinds of different opportunities, all kinds of different lessons and curriculum. Again, this is my fourth session that I've been able to present to during this conference, this virtual conference. So everything from teaching about the Arab-Israeli conflict to ancient Israel, history of anti-Semitism, religion and politics in the Middle East. Again, all these sessions we have lessons on that you can use directly, bring them directly into your classroom. If you have any questions, please do reach out to me. Again, I'll make sure that I have share my email address with everybody. So if you have any questions about either bringing professional development to your school or about a resource or a question of how to use something in the classroom, please do reach out to me. Okay, so let's go ahead and get to the topic at hand. Religion and religion in the classroom. Again, as a social studies teacher, I think it's really important, teaching history that we're teaching about different religions. And one thing, and not that you'd want to scare your students, but the idea that we definitely know that the religious intolerance is continues to be and has been forever a problem in the world. And again, we've seen in recent times a rise of religious intolerance, and I think this is pretty directly connected to the lack of understanding about religion. So I think the more that we can do as teachers and educators to share with our students that people may have different beliefs, and people, of course, look at the world differently. I think the more that we can, learn about different religions is a way of course, fighting against this religious intolerance. So whether it be, again, attacks on mosques throughout the world, in the United States, and synagogues and churches, this again remains to be a problem. So again, I hope that as your students continue to learn more and more about religion, that the level of religious intolerance and religious illiteracy goes down. A resource that you may want to share, and we have all of these resources on our website. I'll give you most of the links for this during this session, but this is just a couple years ago now. I'm looking at the rise of attacks on houses of worship throughout the world, and this is just a list of just, again, in the last decade, all the different attacks that we saw on religious houses of worship. So again, something that might be worth sharing with your students. So this sign, this is actually a sign that came up during the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, in back in August of 2017. So this, of course, was a protester against the rally, or a counter protester. An injury to one is an injury to all. If we could put in that chat box, what does that make you think of? Or if your students saw that sign, how would they react to that? Why is this a message that your students would that it would resonate with them? Do you have any thoughts on that? Thank you. Yeah, we are all connected. Again, if anybody wants to unmute, by all means, feel free to do that. The ripple effect of actions. Yeah. Everyone is connected, global community. We have to look out for one another. Good. Yeah, yeah. Our kids get injustice. Good, sure. We say sometimes violence is never directed at just one group because hate doesn't exist in a vacuum. Um, Ignorance can easily lend itself to oppression and violence. And it's important to remember, again, that an injury to one is an injury to, or is a concern for all. Um, Sometimes this makes me think back to Martin Luther King, and injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Um, Again, I think it's a powerful statement. I think it's a nice reminder, something that can be shared with students. Okay, continuing, I have just a quick little video clip. This is from Adama Dieng, the UN Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide. This was an address that he gave back in 2019. But I think it's a pretty powerful statement. Again, something that might be worth sharing with your students. I'm going to go ahead and share this with us.
We all have to remember that hate crimes is preceded by hate speech. We all have to remember that the genocide of the Tutsis in Rwanda started with hate speech. The Holocaust did not start with the gas chambers. It started long before with hate speech. What we have been seeing in Myanmar against the Rohingya population started also with hate speech. And today, what we are witnessing around this world, with the rise of extremists, be it in Europe, be it in Asia, everywhere, when we see the growing number of neo-Nazi group, neo-fascist group, when we see the way migrants and refugees are being vilified, we need therefore to make every effort to address this hate speech. We have to bear in mind that words kill. Words kill as bullets. And that is why we need to make every effort to invest on education, to invest on the youth, so that the next generation will understand the importance of living peacefully together. We need to make every effort so that the attacks like the one we have witnessed in Sri Lanka, when churches were attacked, the one we witnessed in New Zealand, what we saw in Pittsburgh, all this has to stop. And to stop it, we need to invest more on mobilizing the youth. We need to use the verb to become a tool for peace, a tool for love, a tool for increasing social cohesion, harmony in our world, instead of being a tool for committing genocide, crimes against humanity.
So again, I feel like that to me, I feel like is a pretty powerful statement, and as to why it's important to learn about other cultures and learn about other people, and of course in the classroom as much as we can to remind our students to be respectful of each other and to speak kindly toward each other. Does anybody have any thoughts on the video? Is that something that you'd be able to share with your students? Good. Yeah. Yeah, and I put the link, of course, in the chat there for everybody to access that directly. Okay, next.
We all.
So what does religious intolerance look like? And I just want to spend a minute or two on this. Thank you, Carol. Yeah, I agree that video was pretty powerful. If you can, and if you have access, I know sometimes we're doing this on our phones and whatnot, but if you have the ability to open up another tab, if you want to go to this for a moment, it's bit.ly/ and it's all caps ICS Padlet. I'll put that in the chat here as well, so you can just click on it if it works for you. I'm going to show everybody what it looks like. And again, the idea would be that you could use something, if you're not familiar with Padlet, just a nice little online bulletin board teaching tool you can use. It the information shows up in real time, so you just sign up for an account. It's limited a little bit when you're for a free account, but it is free, at least to start. And it looks like something like this. So the question, what does religious intolerance look like? I've had other teachers do this already, and rather than starting over, again, we've just the 50 minutes together. If anybody wants to add, everybody, if you can see, there's a plus sign. I believe it should be in the right corner of your screens as well. And if you click on that plus sign, it gives you the opportunity to add an image, add a comment, add a quote. But again, and I think, did something change? I think, I don't know if somebody was adding something there. Oh yeah, look at that, in real time. So again, this is I wanted to show you this as a tool of something that you could do with your students, whether you give them this exact same question and have them respond to this by creating your own Padlet. Lack of human rights, no regard for values, yeah. They could find images, and again, there's some images here that other teachers have put up and shared when I've done this session with them. But again, I think this is something that is just something to get your students thinking, to get them, to get the conversation started, the discussion started in terms of, what examples of religious intolerance have they seen, have they noticed? Yeah, opposite of unity. Thank you. And I'm trying to read as you type. I don't know if anybody has any images or anything else that wanted to use as adding to this Padlet here. I'm not seeing everybody, not saying if anybody wants to say anything. Does anybody have any comments? Again, you can either unmute yourself or put in the chat. Do we see how we could use this Padlet in the classroom? It's just Padlet.com, log in, or sign up for an account. You can sign up for free, I think you can only create a few Padlets for free before getting a subscription. But again, it's just a nice little tool. So again, I see a few different comments. I don't know if anybody wants to speak more about what they had to say, but again, I hope that this is something that everybody can relate to, and something, again, that your students could maybe, great. Yeah, I'm glad, Lynn, that it works for you. Yeah, so again, I don't know. I know some of us I'm sure are still teaching remotely. Others, I know have students in front of us. Yeah, I agree, Carol. I think kids can definitely use this tool. Yeah. So unless anybody else has any comments on either images that you would have seen about religious intolerance, or any comments on religious intolerance. Using Christmas as the exclusive holiday in December, yeah. Again, definitely recognizing that your students come from different backgrounds, and that it's important to recognize that and remember that. Okay. Again, by all means, please feel free to continue to comment. Others will come back and look at this another time. You guys can look at this another time as well. I don't want to stop anybody if they're in the middle of responding. Not recognizing all religions. Again, I don't remember if some of these are older comments or things you just put on there, but we're going to go ahead and continue, okay? All right. So again, religious intolerance, these are just a couple examples, right? So graffiti on the Islamic Center, graffiti and desecration of Jewish cemeteries, are all, of course, examples that we continue to see, unfortunately, in the United States and around the world of examples of religious intolerance. So where does that religious intolerance come from? And I think I spoke a little bit about it earlier, but a lot of it has to do with lack of knowledge, and this idea that people just don't know that much about religion, and fear of the unknown, and fear, what's different from us. So again, this is what I put at the very beginning. A link to this Pew Research Forum quiz. So again, it might be fun to have your students do this. It might be fun. I had fun just doing it myself. So I'm going to put it there. I don't think we really have time to do that right now for everybody, but there's the link. It's just 15 questions. It's fun to kind of just maybe to see where you are. I imagine some of us probably are already teaching religion. If you don't, you may not know as much as some others. So it'd be interesting to see where you all score. But, again, maybe not all that surprisingly, but Americans do not know all that much about religions that are different for themselves, and oftentimes are not even able to answer questions correctly about their own religions. Um, and again, so the lack of education on religion really seems to be a big factor, of course, in terms of some of the rising trends of religious intolerance. So as much as we can to remind or to teach our students about different religions, I think can, work to combat religious intolerance. So when we're talking about religious literacy, what do we mean? Religious literacy is the ability to discern and analyze the fundamental intersection of religion with social, political, and cultural life. This comes from the American Academy of Religion. It's important to note that many of our students may attend a Sunday school or some sort of religious school, and what you're doing in your classroom. Of course, those of us that are teaching about religion in the classroom, that it should not look the same as what a student that is going to their Bible study, right? So what we do in the classroom is very different. We're talking about the study of religion from an academic, non-devotional perspective. And it's critical that students have that to decrease religious illiteracy and bigotry and the prejudice that it fuels. So again, according to the American Association for Religion, a religiously literate person possesses a basic understanding of the history, central texts, beliefs, practices, and contemporary manifestations of several of the world's religious expressions. I do have teachers sometimes ask about, well, do I have to teach all religions, and what does that mean? And I understand, of course, in teaching a world history class or in teaching, it's hard to get to everything. But again, as much as you can to try and give your students an opportunity of background to see that there are many different religions out there, and do as much as you can to share that with your students. Again, the ability to discern and explore religious dimensions of political, social, cultural expressions across time and place. I'll talk about this again, but it's important to remember that religion, like everything else, changes over time, and the practice of religions change over time. So just a couple of things. That comes from from actually Facing History. It's another great organization. It talks about religious illiteracy, and I'm going to just put the link in there if you want to read more about this. But they shared an article, Overcoming Religious Illiteracy, a Cultural Studies Approach, and they just had a couple premises I wanted to share with you. This actually came from originally a book from Diane Moore, who wrote on this topic. But understanding that there exists a widespread illiteracy about religion that spans the globe is something that I would, at least we should be familiar with, even if our students aren't. An urgent consequence of religious illiteracy is it often fuels prejudice and antagonism. So we talked a little bit about that before. And it is, of course, possible to diminish religious illiteracy by teaching about religion from a non-sectarian perspective in our schools. So again, that's something that I think is really important. And of course, as social studies teachers, it's our job to do that, right? Nobody else in the schools is going to be doing that. So one more quote here. The National Council for the Social Studies has a statement on the teaching of religion. Again, unfortunately, this can become quite a controversial topic and can lead to some dilemmas and some controversy in your classrooms. Zach enters Have a Little Faith video, some soul pancake. Thank you, Carol. So that's a resource that you've been able to use in the classroom. Is anybody else, did you want to share anything more about that, Carol, or? That's a resource.
Sure. I just,
Please.
Zach Anners he's very interesting because he wants to find out about faith because he says he doesn't have any. And in his interviews, he just goes out and interviews just everyday people, students, and talks to them about their faith. And I've used one on Hinduism and Islam the most. So watch them ahead of time because some of them aren't as good as others, but
Sure.
I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Great. Yeah, so again, so this is the quote from NCSS: only through learning about religions and beliefs will young people be adequately prepared for citizenship in a religiously diverse society and world. Again, something that I feel really strongly about. All right. So what does the law say about religion in the public sphere? I want to share a resource um, with you. And this is something that you can find on our website. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link for you. So we have some excerpts here, some from some primary sources I'm sure that you're familiar with. So this is how you access the handout. Again, you can print it out if you're in person and pass out copies to your students. You can give them the link. We have we're trying to get everything into like these Google Forms on our website so that you can like share those links with your students, and students can answer the questions right there online, so that might work better for many of you. So we're in the process of getting all that ready. So again, we have a couple different things that I want us to get into breakout rooms, but I think I'll hold off on breakout rooms for a little bit longer, so we don't run out of time. But so religion in the United States, key documents. So we have here, see excerpts from the Declaration of Independence, US Constitution, Bill of Rights, the Pledge, and the Supreme Court. I'll show it to you right here again. And the way that you could use this activity with your students is to, simply either what we usually do, what I try and do in these sessions is I put all of you into breakout groups and give you a chance to talk about one of these sources. So the idea is to look at what, do the foundational documents here in the United States, what do they have to say about religion, and where do we find religion in those documents? What are the, thank you, Michelle. I'm not gonna be able to get through all that right now, but thank you for sharing that. Um, they're always making improvements and considering that. Great, thank you. So yeah, so what do our foundational documents have to say about religion? So again, looking at this yourselves and then sharing this with your students to see where do we find religion in our own documents, and then when we talk about teaching religion in schools, what's appropriate, when is that appropriate? It's interesting to have this conversation of those that were writing the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution. Where do we find religion, and what does that say about our own history? And then we get into a little bit more contemporary. So we, again, Bill of Rights, and then we get into a little more contemporary times. First with the Pledge of Allegiance, which I know is often a topic for schools and students. Interestingly, if you're not aware, in the Pledge of Allegiance, the phrase "under God" was not added to the Pledge of Allegiance until 1954. So it's interesting to have that conversation with students as to what that means, and why was it added then, and what was going on in the rest of the world. And then in 1963, the Supreme Court addressed this very fact about teaching religion in the classroom. And I just wanted to point out one thing that they said, I think is really important, and something that I like to definitely share with teachers. It might well be said that one's education is not complete without a study of comparative religion, or the history of religion and its relationship to the advancement of civilization. Again, so if we're talking about splitting this session up into two, the first half here, why teach religion? This gets again into why teach religion, right? The idea that it's necessary for our students, it's necessary for to be part of a society like ours, to understand people of different religious backgrounds, or people of different backgrounds. Okay, so that's a lot of the why of religion. So now we're going to get into the how do you teach about religion? So I'm going to put up some images, and I'd like to see if we can get some either comments in the chat. What do we see here? What are these images of, and what do they have to do with each other? Are these images that you could show in your classrooms? And unfortunately, the last one's going to kind of cover the others, but community, yeah. Ceremony, sure. What are the different religions that are represented here? Yeah, thank you. Good. I'm glad we could and should share those. I definitely agree. Yeah. Judaism, Islam, Buddhism. It's interesting. So they often get questions of like, is that Catholic or not? Hinduism. And what do we think? Is that Catholicism? In the bottom right? I think if somebody might be trying to talk, I think you're muted.
Oh yeah, sorry. Generally
It's okay.
speaking, Catholics would have Jesus on the cross and
Okay.
Protestants don't, but that's not universally true. It just generally true.
Okay, yeah. Looks Lutheran, sure. Another point that sometimes gets made, and again, I don't want to, I don't think I'm wrong. I've had others tell me anyway that you wouldn't have the women leading the ceremony in Catholicism. I don't know if that is. I should probably check on that before I keep repeating that. That's what other people have shared with me when I've shared these slides.
Well, that's true, because then if that's the case, if it's Lutheran, it would probably be more ELCA as opposed to Missouri Synod or Wisconsin Synod.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Definitely could be Episcopalian, maybe even Methodist.
Sure. Yeah. And of course, Buddhism as well. All right, so we got all five there. Okay, so yeah, again, I hope these are images that you could feel comfortable sharing in your classroom as ways to show just this is how people express themselves. These are, religious ceremonies, right? So when we're talking about religion and we're talking about, what are we sharing? And Michelle, I do want to see what you had to say. Okay. Yeah, so I did want to see that that keynote on Sikhism, and I missed that, so I do need to go back and see that. Yeah, I'm glad to see that was helpful for you. That you thought there were impactful statements in there. So religions are systems of belief, behavior, and belonging. Again, so you can access this document from our website, the Religious Studies Companion Document. So this is put together by NC3. So it's put together by the National Council for Social Studies and many other organizations. An appendix to the C3 framework. And it definitely focuses on this, religions are beliefs, behaviors, and belonging. So all this comes right there from that. But again, I think this is definitely when you're talking about, how can I teach religion? Well, by focusing on these things, right? So what are the different beliefs of particular religions? What are the different behaviors and practices of those religions? And then this community, right? What does it mean to belong to that religion? What does that look like? And what does that mean to people when they say that they are part of that religion? So these are all examples, I think, of what you might want to focus on when you're teaching about different religions. Just to say just a quick point on sources, by all means, get those primary sources when applicable, when your students are able to, also students can handle these, right? So bring in different examples of religious texts. It can be, academic studies as well as those sacred texts. Show the students what those look like. Let them, interact with that. Again, it should not look the same as it would in like a Bible study class, but by all means, having students interact with different texts and religious texts is definitely something that is okay to be doing and you shouldn't be fearful of. Again, a couple other things that came from that C3 framework that I quickly shared with everyone. Things that you definitely want your students to recognize and remember. Religions are internally diverse. So when you talk about, Islam, Christianity, and we started talking a little bit about Christianity, right? Different, sects of Christianity. All Christians don't believe the same thing. Well, neither do all Muslims, neither do all Jews or Hindus or Buddhists for that matter. So it's important for our students to understand that religions evolve and change. Obviously, a lot of us, in teaching world history, you may talk about the foundations of a religion. I think it would be a disservice for our students to not recognize that just because that's how the religion began, centuries ago, maybe, does not mean that religion still practices the same way today. Religions, of course, change over time. And again, religion is not separate from culture or other forms of human expression. So as you teach about cultures of the world, as you teach about, how people live, really, teaching religion has to be part of that. Just a couple other really important points, and this is where this comes from that C3 framework I was just showing you. When we're talking about, how can I teach religion and what should I be focusing on? It's the academic, making students aware of different religions. It's having students study but not practice, and that becomes really tricky. I know, when I was in the classroom, you want to make your, I remember history comes alive and make it, fun and interesting and interactive. And it becomes a little bit difficult when you're getting into religion in terms of, how do you make sure that, you're making your students aware of what it looks like, but not actually practicing the religion in class. It's something I think that we do need to be aware of. Educating about the different religions, of course, even if it's your own religion, we're never promoting or denigrating other religions or saying these are good religions, these are bad religions. Informing, right? Not giving our students like, hey, here's some religions that you may want to convert to someday. And so we just, here are the religions of the world, and this is what we're focusing on. Okay, so we don't have all that much time, but I do want to put us in breakout rooms at least for a few minutes. So I have 7 case studies. So I'm going to give us the link. So if you can open this link, and you'll see this handout that's on the screen, Teaching About Religion in Public Schools, and there's 7 different examples. I want to, and again, it'll just give us maybe about 2 people or so in each of our breakout rooms, 2, maybe 3. And if you can, in just the next few minutes, I'd like you to discuss the example that you have there. So it'll just be 1 through 7. So if you're breakout room 1, do case 1, breakout room 7, case 7, and so forth. So let's just take a few minutes to do that, and just let's. I'd like us to, as we do that, look at these guidelines if we can, right? Are these examples of how teachers have tried to teach about religion in the classroom? Do they abide by these guidelines or not? Are these acceptable ways to be teaching about religion or not? What do we think? So we'll just take maybe just a few minutes to quickly review the example, and then see if we can share some comments when we come back. Okay. So again, just a few minutes. Yeah, Michelle, I missed that, the keynote this morning. I need to go back and see that as well. That worked out well this morning? Okay, I know I didn't give, well, give us just a moment. I think everybody's gonna rejoin us. Okay, thank you. I know I did not give us much time. Did I have anybody, I'm trying to figure out, and I know that, I'm not sure everybody was able to make it into the different breakout rooms. We don't have all that much time, but I do want to put this, make sure this is back up on the screen. Everybody still sees the case studies here on the screen? Okay. Do I have, I think it was, is it Don and Jacob? Did either of you want to tell us about this first scenario?
Well, we just talked about how we feel it's appropriate. And
Okay.
when we have foreign diplomats, when we have, say, our Secretary of State goes overseas to Israel or the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
they often wear a yarmulke if they visit the Wailing Wall or
Sure.
other areas. So it's not that uncommon
Mm-hmm.
for our diplomats to go overseas and wear those.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Like I said, so there was, sometimes in some of these, actually, in all of these examples, there became a little bit of a controversy, so much so that at one point, the recommendation was that you might be best if you are visiting places of worship to do it at a time, not during a service, and that to maybe just to make sure that the parents are aware that this is something that, it's not like a, doesn't, you're not changing religion by doing that. But by maybe making it as an optional thing, or just different ways of doing something like that. But yeah, so that's our first example there, the case of the Jewish kippah or yarmulke. Arabic calligraphy. Carol and Liz, did either of you have anything you wanted to share on this one?
I mean, I think we both agreed that this was not appropriate and
Okay.
didn't have sound instructional practice behind it. We felt it was a lot more indoctrinating. It being a statement of faith and not necessary was a problem.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. I do get, so that's typically the view I think that most people will have, most teachers will give. I do have sometimes teachers that will try and argue the other side and say that it's simply just trying to become familiar with the practice of calligraphy and familiar with what Arabic looks like and how it's written. But then it gets into the issue of, well, but what are they writing, and is that important? Is that relevant? And why are they writing this statement of faith? Again, thank you for sharing your thoughts there. The third one, Hindu practice. I think, was this just our Emperor of Education here? Not sure who was, if you were by yourself there. Do you have any thoughts? The case of Hindu practice, right? I think we'll skip over that one. Again, not all that much more time. The Christian dogma, I think we had, was it Michelle and Stephanie? Did either of you have any comments to make there?
We looked at it briefly, and when you come to the last statement, I'm talking about that if you believed anything except for Christianity, that you were going straight to hell was not a good thing to state, because you, especially if the person speaking not sure of who he's speaking to, and it could lead to alienation of the kids. And
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. That comes up sometimes with the idea that oftentimes, we think about, all right, who could I bring into my classroom? I want to have it, maybe I'm not so familiar with this religion, or I want to have a guest speaker. And it's just the issue that we don't control what people say when they come into our classroom. So it's just something to be aware of, that if you ever are to have a person of faith, not an academic, but a person from the clergy to come in, that they may say things that you're not, that maybe it would work just fine on a Sunday, or just fine in the place of worship, but in the classroom maybe is not what we want them to be saying. So just something to be mindful of when we talk about bringing people, guest speakers into our classroom. We had a few more here. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, another thing that I think is so challenging sometimes is that balance between um just offering something that's so superficial that it really doesn't give any insight into the true belief or motivation, or on the other hand offering something that's so embedded or like essential that it uh like separates people in a way that they can't really listen, which is why, like I put into the chat, is the beauty of the storytelling, that it can come across as real and as deep and as essential as it is, and it's the story told, so it's their story, and it leaves it not superficially, nor does it um put it as the judgment statement.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions of how you would bring that into the classroom, or how you could do that?
I think that this conference has, in many ways, given us glimpses of how we attempt to do that. And I would recommend going back through many of the sessions that have been talking about how to bring stories in. And it's something I want to do more.
Thank you. Yeah. That's
it kind of seems to me in that scenario, it's incumbent upon the teacher, well, over time, to vet who they're bringing in. But that's
sure.
Even beyond that, to just say, okay, fine, but not all Christian denominations believe that. Can you talk about what those are? So that means I'm prepared in those conversations to direct either that speaker or just my students. That's not the type of conversation always had throughout the entire faith system. So that's where it's like, to me, I don't mind if a person says this. There's a large group of Christians that believe that.
Sure, yeah.
Even what we would potentially even consider an evil way, but that's not the point. The point is that not their faith? Is that not what they believe? Sure. But what's the other ones? What, even within for example, I mentioned the different pictures. There's like different Lutherans. Yeah, and they have completely different perspectives of in the ministry. So it's like, well, I need to do my research on my own, and then I need to help guide that conversation to explore. I want my kids to smell the BS and for them to raise questions.
Sure.
So anyway, I don't have a
problem.
No,
that's great, and I appreciate your thoughts. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and thank you so much, everybody. Just a couple of things. Just on our website, we have additional sources that I'd like you to take a look at if you get a chance at icsresources.org. This idea of using a virtual museum. I just want to put this in the chat for everybody. As a way of going about trying to teach about religion, using this idea of a virtual museum. So we have a template for you that you can use, including a ThingLink is another great resource. We don't have time to get into our ThingLink, unfortunately. Again, this is the virtual museum. The virtual museum. The last thing, if you have just a moment, again, thank you so much for joining us. Again, I appreciate your guys' comments, and I wish we had more time. If you do have just a couple more minutes, or even just a minute, if you can go to that link I just gave you and do a quick little evaluation for me, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. I think the conference is over. Am I right? I think we're all done here. But thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming out on a Saturday to participate. I have a few more minutes if anybody had any other comments or or questions, I'd be happy to stick around. Again, it doesn't look like anybody else is using this room. I think our virtual room anyway is empty. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. If you have any comments you want to put in the chat, thank you. I'm glad that you did enjoy this session, Carol. But if anybody else has any comments or questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. I was just trying to fill out the bit.ly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this topic is so it's so important, and it's so hard, and it's so crucial because, I mean, like you said, it's so embedded in why people do or don't do whatever they do, and
Yeah.
like it, it, it it's so hard to step into someone's shoes or to see the perspective without having any knowledge at all. And like there's so much depth to understanding,
Yeah.
and it's so fascinating, like, just to learn. And I think it's okay to like strongly believe what you believe, and to really want to deeply understand why other people believe that. And the more
Yeah.
you learn, the more you see how interconnected things truly are. And it's just so fascinating to me. But thank you so very
Yeah.
much.
No, thank you, Michelle. Thank you for your thoughts.